You're listening to the Bourbon and Balance podcast, where we discuss fitness and the finer things in life with people who find balance between both.
This week we had the opportunity to interview Bert Sorin, co-owner and president of Sorin exercise equipment. During our conversation, we discussed some of the history behind the company. We discussed Bert's crazy rise from walk-on to conference record holder in the hammer throw, as well as how his hard work during college shaped his mindset and approach to business in the years after college. Grab your pen and notepad because this episode is full of nuggets and pearls that are going to make you a more legendary person. If you haven't already seen, we just launched our new Broly training program, bodybuilding plus Olympic lifting equals Broly training. We're really excited about this. So if you're interested, head over to social media, check out the details. And if you like what you see, use the promo code Broly50 to get 50% off your first month of Broly training. Also, this week's episode is sponsored by Cold Whip Speed Ropes. Originally, when we started the show, we didn't want to have a sponsor on the show, but we feel really strongly, not only about the product, but also supporting our friend and guest from the show, JP Coleman, who is the CEO of Cold Whip Speed Ropes. So if you use jump ropes in your workouts, head over to their website or their social media, check them out, and head over to the website and order one. You will not regret it. They are the most smooth, long-lasting ropes on the market. Get one today.
Is that Bourbon and Balance? Can you say it? Yep.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 5, season 2 of the Bourbon and Balance podcast. I'm Tully, sitting next to my best bud, Ryan, who's about to be 30 years old.
Don't bring it up, man.
Why? Nothing you can do about it.
I know. I can't fight it.
You are in the best shape of your life. You're not as good looking as you used to be, but
I'm not as good looking as I used to be. I'm getting old and weathered. It is kind of. Don't look at my wife's making a frown face.
Oh, geez. We are on today with the president and the president and co-owner of Sorin equipment, Bert Sorin. How are you doing, Bert?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
thanks. You guys are all talking about being old now. What, 30?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can probably remember, right? Maybe it was a long time ago, but
I remember actually telling I think it was my mom. I was like, I'm an adult now, and she's like, "Wait, you were an adult a while ago." I was like, "Nah." I was like, "When you're 18, I guess you're technically an adult, but you're still doing little kid crap."
Oh yeah.
And when you're 21, that's like the next milestone. But you're like, yeah, but I could still I'm still in college, and kids in college aren't adults, in my opinion.
No.
And then you're like 25, you're like, oh, I could like rent a car now.
Legally.
And you're like, yeah, but I'm still in my 20s, and college kids are in their 20s, and I'm not and then I was like, but 30, I have no excuse.
Yeah.
I'm an adult.
I agree.
See, I have crossed the threshold because my wife and I just had our first child. She's 2 months old. And now I officially feel like I have crossed over the threshold where I enjoy what I do for a living, but I essentially don't play at all during the day. I'm either working or taking care of the baby or the family right
Which
now.
is why we started the podcast. As a blatant excuse to hang out with each other.
Yes.
And be degenerates like we were in our 20s still.
Yep.
That is smart. Yeah. I have a group of people like that, but they dwindle as the older you get, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not that I don't feel old. But it's definitely like, and actually you bring up the fact that you had a kid. You were really like my first, besides Johnny Rugby, you were like my first like best friend that had a child. And now I'm at the age where my best friends are having kids.
Yeah.
And I'm also at the age where we're like, when are we gonna have kids? I'm like, no, the whole 20s went so fast. Like, what are we doing?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's one of those. I think my first kid, I was 34, maybe something around there.
Yeah.
And in some ways, many ways, I'm glad I waited till then. And then the only reasons like you don't want to is because you're going, well, I don't want to be super old when my kids are doing cool stuff. So then that just gives me motivation to stay in shape, eat well, whatever. So I could be a normal dude when they're in college and all that stuff.
Yeah. That's definitely something that's like extra woken up for me is like, now I'm realizing I want to be in as good a shape as I can be so I can be there, you know,
dude,
whatever
you're talking
she
like
needs.
a real dad.
I'm serious,
dude.
though.
It's
like,
so weird.
Whatever she ends up doing, I want to be able to run around and chase her. And, you know, if she ends up playing lacrosse or softball or something, I want to be able to be involved in that kind of stuff, you know? So
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I was going to say, how many kids do you have?
Where it used to be just go out and have a great time and whatever Bert wanted to do. With everything. And then about 33, 34, I decided like, all right, I don't need to be selfish anymore. And then so
I mean, you had your time. You had a good time, I'm sure.
Yeah. If I hadn't figured out how to have a good time between like 15 and 34, then I was asleep at the wheel. So
sure.
So how many kids do you have? Three. And what are the ages?
5, 7, and 9.
Oh, those are fun ages.
I'm still in the middle of it right now, which is cool because now they're getting like to a cool age where they
can understand things like
they're not just like little things.
Just eat and poop and take away your sleep.
So no, it's great. Like I'm enjoying that part of life. But I mean, I was wanting them to grow up to like this stage, and now they're here. It's like, all right, just pretty much hang here. It'll be good for a minute.
Perfect.
Sure. So let's get to know you a little bit, just for our listeners. If they don't recognize you, I'm sure most of our listeners in the fitness, like health and fitness industry, have used a piece of Sorin X. To be completely honest, like and transparent, I had never heard of Sorin X until really meeting Rick.
Sure.
And now, and it's kind of like, I always give this analogy for some reason, but when you get a car, up until that point, you never see that car. And then once you get that vehicle, that's the only vehicle you ever see on the road. You're like, oh, cool. I thought my truck was unique. And now I'm seeing them, you know, like every 2 miles. So now that I have been introduced, you know, over a year now, to the company as a whole, like now I see it all the time. So I guess just
we're doing a good job.
Yeah. So real quick, just like, what is Sorin X?
Sorin X was just a labor of love that my dad, Richard Sorin, started in 1980. So what's that? 42 years ago? 41 years. So he was always into the strength game, always loved strength conditioning, loved lifting since he was 10 years old. And, but he was also good at building things, and he was a coach, and was always building equipment for himself, and started building a few things in some local high schools and churches. Said, hey, will you build me a bench or build me a squat rack? Or he was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then he got really exploring more into that side of it and realized that, I mean, he's a big, strong man. He's tall and everything like that. So like the equipment that was purchasable, that was on the market at that time, really wasn't built for really big, strong people. So he said, well, I think it could be safer doing this. I think it could be better or nicer or stronger or sturdier. So he just said, well, I'm just going to make it myself. So there's never really like a business plan of like, we're going to go out and attack the strength world. It was, we're going to build some stuff that was cool that we like. If people locally buy it, that would be great. And we'll go from there. And then, so I always kind of say that was my dad's cover charge into the strength world is having Sorin X, because that was some additional relevance besides being so he was a national caliber lifter, but still there was like just one more thing that he was in the world that he loved.
Sure.
So that's how it started.
Where did he grow up, or I guess where did you guys grow up when it was kind of like started?
Well, he grew up in New Jersey and was a discus thrower. So he got recruited to come down to South Carolina. That's how he came down here. And then I was born in South Carolina. And so I've been here my whole life. But, you know, I was probably 4 years old or so when he started the company. Yeah. So I was around it. It was my dad built stuff in the garage.
Yeah. And that's where headquarters are now.
Yeah. In Lexington, South Carolina, which is right outside of Columbia.
Yeah.
Your partially the way I started following Sorin X way back was listening to the Power Athlete Radio, and you're on there.
John and the guys.
One of my favorite things about strength and conditioning is kind of like the history of strength and conditioning, and you sharing stories about the feats of strength that your dad and like his friends had pulled off that will have never been, recorded, or will never, other than the people who saw it with their eyes, or the legends being told, the amazing things. I don't know why that was the thing that really sparked me starting to follow Sorin X.
Oh, cool.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty neat because, like, not to go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, you growing up around it, you just see some wild things that, I mean, my dad's he's a weird guy. Like, I mean, as far as weird, I mean, he is lovingly so, but he's different. He's extraordinary and always saw the world differently. And so just being around that, you just saw things differently. When all the other guys were, going out and watching a baseball game or whatever they were doing, my dad was lifting really, really heavy freaking weights by himself in the garage because he just thought it was a cool idea.
Yeah.
This was like in the 80s when it was like, who was doing that?
Right.
Or some of the grip feats and things like that, like from gripping different barbells and stuff that is world renowned as a feat. To think that he would just go in his garage and do it,
like, just
until
for fun.
he do it. Yeah, you're just like, it's kind of like the first guy that ate an oyster. How is that a good idea? Where you're like, oh, I bet this is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it looks like a loogie.
Right, cool. Yeah, exactly. But so I look at those things, and that part kind of really surprised. Like, I was around it, but it still just surprises me that his forethought to do things that were extraordinary. That there was no obvious payout. There was no, hey, this is going to help business. This is going to be cool. There'll be ever a social media. I mean, there's none of that crap. There's no internet really at that point. So then some guy in the 80s would just do hard crap in his garage.
Was he training for anything specifically? Like, you said he was a thrower, but was he just like at that time having fun?
He was done throwing, and he was doing his business. But he was a coach and a teacher, and then he would get off work, running. He would do extra bus duty for extra money. He would pay out. He would get all the other teachers to pay them to do he would do the bus duty. So he would make like $5 a day extra. So then he would take that money and go downtown and get steel before Owen Steel would close, tie it on top of a old Land Cruiser, drive it home, build equipment in the garage until like 8 or 9, eat dinner, and then lift weights until like 10.
Wow.
That was it.
So was he like a self-taught like builder or engineer or welder, or like he taught himself all of that stuff?
Yeah, he did some classes and some things like that he was kind of pulled into some potential programs when he was in high school, but he thought that was his direction.
Yeah.
And then it turned out he could throw a discus really far. So they're like, hey, you should come to college. Sure. And he's like, what's that? And they're like, it's a thing down here. And he's like, sounds fun. I'll go.
Yeah.
So that was about the extent of it. He's the first person in our family that ever been to college on that side. So he literally told me later, he goes, I thought it was like summer camp. Like, I didn't know what it was. Like, people would talk about going to college. I didn't. It was fun.
That's wild. I really appreciate people. It's hard in the strength industry now with it being so saturated when somebody starts doing things that are different to know whether or not they're pushing the boundary. That's a good thing. That's going to make the industry better. Or is it just a gimmick to get views or whatever? But I love, people that just kind of go their own way and forge their own path, especially, now with all that kind of, notoriety that people kind of get. But your dad being way ahead of the curve, like, that's wild. How much of that did that carry over to you? Like, throughout your life, did you jump in and lift? Did you?
Yeah. Like, the activities certainly carried over, but the mindset carried over. I'm proud that a lot of the mindset carried over as well.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if I'll ever be as kind of off the radar as he will be, but
it's kind of impossible now. Like,
right. Well, that's the thing, right? But you look at, and it is hard to do things that haven't been done before, but we've done it a number of times in the last 40 years, but I've been here for 21, so 22 now. So we've done a lot of firsts within the industry. And, those first 5 or 6, 7 years that I was there, really the first 10 years, there was a lot of, oh, you guys are, kind of not say flash in the pan, but it was like, oh, you're just doing stuff to be different. And what's the data that supports that and all this other stuff. And I finally said, I was like, listen, all you guys say you're cutting edge, but if you are really cutting edge, you are the data.
Right. If you're doing everything else,
you're
doing everything that everybody else is doing, how are you pushing the limits of, the industry, whatever industry you're in, really?
Whatever it is. But then you can't tell people to push the limits and be cutting edge and then go, but follow the data. You got to do what the research says.
Yeah.
Well, if you're literally exploring, you're potentially going off the end of the earth.
It's interesting that going down this and bringing up so Joe, the owner, right? He was a decathlete, self-taught engineer, self-taught welder and builder, and 90% of the equipment outside of the barbells and the plates within the gym are hand built by him. So all of our organizational stuff is all steel that he bought and welded and designed by himself. It's pretty remarkable. I think you would find it really cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's where the science meets the art.
Yeah,
absolutely. You have the science of this works, but this is the spin on it. This is the spice to it.
Yeah.
That stuff is super cool.
Yeah. I'll have to share it with you offline because I think you'd get a kick out of a lot of the stuff. A lot of it. I mean, you can attest.
It is wild to walk into a place that doesn't just have Rogue or Sorin X or something like that, because on my end in the strength and conditioning world, it's who's got the,
the coolest names.
It's who spent the most money on their facility a lot of times is what I feel like.
And, Joe and I for, the past 3 years have been using it just broke down, but he had an old Honda Ridgeline that we would strap steel from the junkyard down the road on the top of his truck. And everything that we use in the gym is all hand built by us, all the pull-up bars and rigs and
after my own heart, man. Yeah, I get it. It's fun. I mean, that stuff is fun. I mean, that's where this job is good for me. Besides a lot of the stuff I enjoy about it, I always tell my wife, she kind of laughs. She's like, "You just have to run the experiment, don't you?"
Yeah.
And a lot of time, if you look at the scientific method, you have the hypothesis that's based upon your initial findings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to eventually have data and a conclusion. But the middle part of it is you have to run the experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's in my opinion, life is running the experiment.
Yeah.
And so whether it's building a new piece of equipment, whether it's some, a marketing thing that, changing the industry in some way or even I do a lot of hunting. A lot of times it's I just got to run the experiment.
Yeah.
The wind is coming this way today. The thermals are doing this. The moon is doing that. I think deer are going to come out.
Yep.
I got to go find out.
And if you don't, then what are you going to do?
It doesn't matter.
Right. What do you, you just going to second guess the whole time?
That sounds horrible.
Right.
Second guessing your life the whole time. So run the experiment, man.
Nobody's going to consult his hunting guy that says, you didn't follow the data. You didn't follow the previous data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you're like, hey, I do a lot of things. I predict this is going to happen. But the only way is if you get off the couch and do it.
We have had so many pieces of experimental equipment go really, really well and then go really, really wrong. And
wildly so.
But that's so I was an engineer out of school and I quit my engineering role almost 3 years now, maybe 3 years, and took a leap of faith to do this full time, be a CrossFit coach and an athlete. And, I never thought I'd use my engineering skills as much as I do now. And now we're welding things that we're maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't, but you might as well give it a shot.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was one of the first reasons when we came up with the whole idea for a rig was we put holes in all four sides of the rack and then made holes every, 2 inches on center, blah, blah, blah. You know how every rig on the industry works. Well, that was drawn up on a bar napkin by me in 2007. Right. It's hold on, if you do this, you could run every experiment.
Yeah.
And so the idea was you could just attach things as long as you choose to. And so part of it was just gave us tools to play with in the gym to change attack angles, to change load parameters, to be able to just see what would happen.
Yeah. So what's your background as an athlete? I know, I kind of know it just through the research that I had, but What got you into the strength and conditioning world, and then how did you like continue on within the Sorin X industry from there?
Sure. Well, I didn't do a ton of sports in my younger years. I did like little kid soccer and then BMX racing and all that kind of nonsense. Then wrestled early in high school, did some track and field. I think I like 1 year I broke my leg and 1 year I broke my arm. So I only got to do track and field 2 years in high school. And so a lot of that was, being an only child, you just kind of like, for me, it was being outdoors all the time. It was hunting, fishing, camping, like all that was kind of my jam.
Yeah.
So through a crazy series of events, I end up walking onto the South Carolina track and field team. Very Forrest Gumpian way to get on a team.
Yeah.
But I end up on a track and field team that I had no business being on because I wasn't prepared to be on any college track and field team, much less one that was on the rise up and it was a national caliber program.
Sure. Yeah.
So I came onto that. I'd already loved throwing. I thought it was cool. I wouldn't say I loved it. I liked it.
Yeah.
But I had some initial success. I mean, that doesn't mean success like in the broad scope of the term success, like against other people. I just got better. Sure. And my whole life I've struggled with gaining weight. Like I was just a skinny kid forever. So I always had a hard time gaining weight. Well, when I started throwing at South Carolina, we were very, very heavy into lifting. And so I gained like 30 pounds in the first semester, which was like, boom, this is awesome.
Was it good weight? Or was it like freshman 30?
My body fat went from 5.5 to 7.5.
Oh, so yeah. Good weight.
Wow.
Great.
30 pounds of almost completely lean mass.
Yeah. It was difficult because I was eating so much. Like literally my idiot roommate was an idiot, but his theory was, he was like, because I was kind of like Rudy. Like everyone was like, all right, Bert, you got to do this.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, all right, good. So he's like, all right, how you gain weight? You eat until you almost puke. And then you put yourself away from the table and you breathe for like 10 minutes and then eat one more patty meal.
There we go.
And that was it. 5 meals a day for years.
Damn. Wow. That's like,
but you gain weight really quickly, dude.
Yeah, no kidding. I told him before about I played college football and I played cornerback and I was not fast enough to run with most receivers, but I was not quite slow enough for D3 to be a outside linebacker or big enough. So I decided I had to bulk up. And I worked at this health club and our custodian was this super old, tall basketball player guy. And he saw me eat a protein bar and like, I don't remember, a bunch of food. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm trying to gain weight. That's a dumbass way to do that. Why don't you just drink a beer and eat a pizza every night like I do? And that was like legitimately his advice.
Well, legitimately it worked.
It probably would have. Yeah. Probably would have felt a little rough going into the season, but.
Oh, I was doing all of that and I would eat a Papa John's large pizza at 11. The entire thing with all the butter stuff and the whole deal. But here's the thing. My squat went from 320 for a single to 445 for 5 in a year.
No way.
Yeah. So I'm like, so this is working.
I mean, I'm sure you got a pretty good boost of test at the same time too, just from like growing.
And I grew in it. Yeah. So it was like, as an 18-year-old, you're like, this is awesome. Yeah. All I got to do is just lift like crazy every day and then eat as much as I possibly could. And I just literally every day I'm strong.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. Yeah. And every day my weight goes up. This is great. So that's where I fell in like love with the whole training because it was like, it was addictive. We used to max out. We had like, I was going to call it a max, but it was a rep max cycle we would run. And every 4 weeks. So you had test day every 4 weeks, which was pretty cool. So you went for a heavy set.
Yeah.
So like this month we're doing 4s. Next month we're doing 3s. We kind of peak down. So every 4 weeks you'd have an opportunity to like, as I call it, touch the curtain.
Yeah.
Like you had an opportunity to go up there and do it. And when you see yourself increasing so fast as you do CrossFit, so like people losing weight or whatever, they just get super locked on. But you get someone that wasn't ever seen as an athlete, but always respected athletes.
Yeah. As
a 17, 18-year-old, you're like, oh, I could be one of those guys. Yeah. I could be one of the people that I think are really cool. And And then all of a sudden you're like, and I'm kind of pretty strong.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like going somewhere and this is a thing. And, then you really screw up a little bit and you like make junior nationals. Cause then it's like junior nationals.
That's just the touch of the drug.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like,
feels good.
okay.
Yep.
And actually that's where I met Susie Powell. We're 18 years old at junior nationals in California.
What just happened?
There you go.
So round robin, I don't know what happened to the audio just now, but for some reason, as soon as you said Susie Powell, it went like berserk.
I'll be honest, that's what my head did when I saw her the first time.
I have heard she is a very nice lady.
Yes, she's exactly. So I'm 18-year-old Bert showing up in California. I look across the track. There's a 6 foot tall blonde doing A skips down the track. I'm like, interesting. And then she goes and smashes like the American, like some kind of record.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're good too. This is cool.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah.
She was. From what I've heard, I've never actually, met her or
Yeah.
anything, but pretty impressive.
So
after you caught the bug, you ended up doing all right.
Yeah, it worked out. So I had I kind of inadvertently walked onto arguably one of the best programs. It was on the eve of being one of the best track programs, especially throws programs in the nation.
In the best conference for track and field.
Don't mix it.
Oh,
yeah. So we were the SEC conference, Division I, and then, but also there was at that time there was UCLA where Susie was.
Mm-hmm.
There was SMU, which was just super badass. And you had like one or two other schools, but like those were the powerhouses. Well, South Carolina was on the way up, and me and my buddies were all freshmen. So we just believed in this crazy fantasy that we were supposed to just go in there and carry this dynasty.
Yeah.
We didn't know any better. We were like, this is going to be awesome and all this other stuff. And so we just trained so freaking hard. Like I remember telling someone, and actually my coach's brother told us this. And he was like, when it comes to your cycle days that you have to, say I'm making up a number, say you have to get 500 in the squat for a set of 3. Like your number is 3. Everyone's number is 3. Well, if you do 2, it's up to me to do 4.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because together we have to make these reps because we're a team going in and we're trying to disrupt the whole NCAA.
That's
and that's eventually what happened.
Yeah. The real magic happens for a lot of teams when, you see the fact that everybody around you is pulling, their own weight, or everybody has a link in the chain or whatever it is, because that's at the high school. I see it a lot. The teams that are really good, the coaches could just not show up to practice and the work would get done,
Work would get done. And we had freshmen that we wanted it so bad. We were calling each other out. We didn't really have to call anyone out, to be honest. Yeah. We all wanted it that bad.
Everybody was bought in.
Everyone was super bought in. And, and one day I did some crazy squat set that it was arguable, like whether it's very foolish to do what I attempted to do. But anyway, so I'm on the way home and I'm riding my bike back up to up the hill to my dorm room, and like my legs seized up and like butt on the seat, feet on the pedals, hands on the handlebars. I just tipped over.
Is this
my whole body seized up.
Is this the set of like 24 back squats at 315?
It was, I think I was supposed to do I was cycled for 315 for 7, because that would have been like my strength level.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to do that because I had done like 305 for 8 the month before.
Sure.
So it was like 315 for 7 is what I was supposed to do. And I did 14.
Oh yeah.
So like my 100% was 7. And I did 14.
Yeah.
And it just put me on weird speed.
Yeah.
It's like cartoonish the way your body behaves at that point.
Right. And then so I just fell over on the side of the road and I just lay there and I literally started crying because I didn't understand what my body was doing. and I was just like, I can't do this. I can't physically do this. Like I was basically washing out because I'd never done anything that hard.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of other things like, weeks and weeks and weeks of this. So I called my team captain, Johnny Stoikos, who was a Olympian on the Canadian track team in the Hammer. And I was like reaching out to him and I hope, because he was always just very good kind of orderly guy.
Yeah.
Right. And I reached out to him. I was like, Johnny, man, this is too hard. Like, I think I'm going to have to quit. Hoping that he would be like, no, Bert, you're a good guy. You can get through this. Like, give me this
console
stuff.
you.
Console me. Yeah. And he goes, well, I mean, you walked onto the hardest, track team in the nation. I mean, we're really good. And I mean, it's not for everybody. And I mean, most people will probably fail because most people can't do the workload we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you're supposed to be like, convincing me to stay.
Yeah, no,
He's
rub
like,
my back and tell me I'm okay.
Beat me by
exactly.
guru.
He goes, well, if you quit, no one would be, we wouldn't blame you. Because I was like this shitty walk-on guy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wasn't asked to come. And all these guys are like, scholarship guys. And I remember going back to my dorm. I'm like, the door's open. There's my out.
Yeah.
Like the people I look up to said it's okay if I leave. And I remember thinking, I was like, holy cow, but I don't think I come back through that door if I go through it.
No.
And then, you just kind of had that first like grown up moment with yourself. You're like, okay.
Yeah. Make
This is what we're doing.
It's like
put in the work.
last podcast with Scott, we talked about how like we always are finding people that are right on the verge of either greatness or quitting. We had a guy on a couple weeks ago that's a videographer.
Well, he's a videographer for Rich Froning at CrossFit Mayhem.
Yeah, but he, COVID hit. He had been at a college and he applied at all these places, and COVID hit, and it was looking like he wasn't going to end up going anywhere. And he's probably on the verge of working for like a regular company,
like a 9 to
just
5.
like making commercials or whatever. And then an opportunity knocks, and he had put in the work. So that's what obviously you're getting to.
Yeah.
You had put in the work, so what happened next?
Well, that was my first of multiple times I was at the same crossroads.
Oh, there we go. Wow.
Yeah.
But that was the first time that was like, oh, okay. And then, kind of long story short, in the college career, ended up getting traction and, made some national championships and then became All-American. And then my last throw of my indoor SEC championships, I had like a 3-foot lifetime best, which is a good time to do it. And broke the SEC record. So I went in unrecruited walk-on and walked out the SEC record holder. And so it was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
That is
so it was one of those, like, it gave me the blueprint of like, here's how you do this.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe you don't get the same success, or maybe you get more, but it's like, okay, this experiment I ran worked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So never quit. I work everybody in the room. Believe you could do things that you've never even heard of. Okay, start there.
Well, yeah. And Papa John's Pizza.
Yep.
Papa John's Pizza. That helps. It certainly helps. I mean, it helps.
Not arguing. Not at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when did Bourbon join the chat?
Yeah. Actually, an old training partner of mine used to talk about like gaining weight, and I'm like, I'm gaining some weight. He's like, well, what'd you gain? I was like, I gained like 3 pounds last week. He's like, stop nickel and diming me. If you don't gain 30, you're not even trying.
Done.
Wow. Okay.
So you, right after college, right? Like you did real well.
Did you try to go the Olympic route?
Yeah. What did that look like? Did you stop after
so
college?
I did pretty well. And then I decided, well, I haven't given the sport enough time. So I'm going to try to go for the 2000 Olympic trials. I did that. And then threw far enough to give myself a thought that I might throw further. So then I trained for another 4 years for a 2004 Olympics.
Wow.
And, but that's hard because like that was in 2000. In 1999, I started working at Sorin full time.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's a difficult one when you're traveling on the weekends and doing installs that take 12 hours or 15 hours. Yeah. And then, I used to kind of laugh when the USA Track and Field would send me in my clearinghouse paperwork for my drug testing and everything like that. Yeah. Like where they know where I am, the whole thing in the Olympic program. You're like, I would write them a letter. I go, listen, I run my own business. I might be in California tomorrow, or I might have to go to Nebraska later on today. Here's my cell phone number. Call me if you need me. I'll tell you where I am. But otherwise, sorry, man, I can't give you 3 months in advance every day training. And I'm not like,
it's insane.
Talking to Joe about that.
Yeah, I've been in the testing pool as well. It's weird.
It's like at the Olympic level too. It's like a 3-month notification on where you're going to be in the weekend.
3 months.
It's like, are you kidding?
Well, and that was a first indicator to me, that level of athlete that is actually a professional athlete. Yeah. They kind of know those things.
Yeah.
Like their cycle is set up. I know who they're training with. I'm like, okay, A, I don't have a coach. B, I'm working 50 hours a week, 60 maybe. I'm traveling all the time. I don't know if I could train later on today. I'm gonna.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Call me if you need me, man.
Kind of shooting from the hip.
Yeah, that's wild that I didn't realize that right off the bat you were boots on the ground doing installs, doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, you have put in the work. You've paid the man to be where you are today. But
when I was 15 in 1992, I was working in the shop, sawing and drilling holes and chipping BBs and prefab stuff.
Yeah, I would love.
But still, like as being an owner and president, I bet a lot of companies are still not having people boots on the ground the way that you have.
Yeah. It's called not being very successful because then you have to do it.
Yeah, you're forced to do it. Exactly. Until you really,
I was going to say it worked out all right.
Yeah.
I kind of joke. I was like, we ran a nonprofit for years.
Oh boy.
So I guess like into the Sorin world, when your dad started the business, was there any like actual competitors or was he not even approaching it like that of like, he's not trying to disrupt the industry at that time, or if there even was an industry, he's more so just kind of like doing his own thing and making badass products.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of that, but I mean, there were certainly competitors. I mean, competitors started coming on relatively soon, So we've always had competitors. I mean, they're all always have different names, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's why I remind my guys, like my team, I'm like, listen. One day, and it's kind of funny, one day I wrote down like a ton of companies.
Yeah.
The hit list.
And they were like, what's that?
The hit list. Yeah.
I said the hit list.
Well, no, I wrote it down. They're like, what's that? And then they noticed it. They recognized a couple of them. And I said, listen, like, read the list. And they're like, I said, who recognizes some of them? Who recognizes all of them? Like, no one said it. I said, that's the list of guys that we've stepped in the ring with over the last 41 years that tried to kill us and we're still here.
Yeah.
So like, kind of like that Alice in Chains song, they come to snuff the rooster. You're like, listen, like we've survived this many fights. Sure. I'm not like puffing up our chest, but we know how to survive in this industry.
Yeah.
And we're only getting stronger. So slow down, work the process. Don't freak out. Like, it's kind of like a contender steps in the ring with you and you're like, okay, he's going to punch me some.
Yeah.
He might even kick me. So he might even win.
Right.
But guess what? Like, I'm coming back.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
And so that's what, but some of the guys even realize, they're like, I've never even heard of this company. I've never even heard of this. I mean, and I'm like, right. But the commonality is we're still here.
Sure. Right.
So like, without giving out all your secrets, obviously, how did you go from you as the co-owner president doing installs and actually doing all the work to being the company that serves the best of the best?
That's certainly it's not an overnight by any means. I've joked with some of my buddies. I was like, all you got to do to be an overnight success is give it 30 years or so.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
But I mean, really, you look back in the 90s, the Bulls, when Jordan and stuff were there, they were lifting on Sorin equipment.
Were they really?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's badass.
Now I gotta go watch the Last Dance just so I can be like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's like pointing at the stream. I'm gonna like hit my wife and be like, that's Sorin.
Look.
Yeah.
We know that guy.
So I mean, that's the thing. We've been around. We didn't have the coverage. So a lot of we were doing the Giants when LT was playing there. Like,
yep.
I mean, there was a lot of stuff we were doing, but we just didn't. We didn't have any type of marketing, so no one knew it.
Yeah.
And that's what you guys do best.
We didn't have the volume of stuff out there. And so, someone told me about 8 or 9 years ago, they said, you guys are the best kept secret in the industry. And I was like, well, that feels nice. But then the other side of you guys, well, it's just a business. I'm trying to be successful.
Make some money.
Secret probably isn't the route you want to go.
Right. So I heard a quote, and I'd like to know a little bit more about the sports that you guys cater to specifically, just because I think you cater kind of outside of my realm of fitness, not entirely, But on another podcast that you were on, you had said that you have at least one piece of equipment in every NFL team's locker room or weight room. So
last time we checked, yeah. I mean, for years it was like, I would say 95 to 98%, only because I was pretty sure we had them all, but I didn't want to make that audacious claim.
So now you are for sure, or maybe.
I mean, yeah. I mean, whether they still are using it, but every single NFL team has purchased from us at some point.
So
that's what I mean, as a high school strength coach, every time I go see a new facility, it's got something Sorin X in it. If not, obviously, like outfitted by you guys.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of mean. Like, you know, if we you get the whole room and it's like a Sorin X room, whatever. Yeah. But there's glute ham rollers and landmines. I mean, heck, even if it's not a Sorin X branded landmine, you know, what gym doesn't have a landmine? That piece was never meant for market consumption. That was my secret weapon to train for the 2000 Olympic trials. Yeah.
Hey, there's a little history for you.
What?
He just told you.
The landmine being that's like an idea of yours.
That's like at the school where I work, we have a landmine on every single rack.
Yeah.
And that is like every single time somebody comes in to look at our facility, they're like, I got to have that.
Yeah. A landmine. We're pretty proud of the landmine because, again, I mean, I never got any royalties off of it, but I would say every strength company has a landmine or a version of it.
In my opinion, it's our best tool at the high school level, because the problem with dumbbells and kettlebells is unless if you buy 200 of them, you know, in my facility, I will run 40 to 80 kids at a session. If I don't have those, then like the kids are ending up having to share. There's log jams with equipment. Right. Whereas the landmine, we can do a row, a press, you name it. And it's adjustable to the rack. It's adjustable to the kid. Yep. It's fast. And I didn't realize that you guys were the ones that put that out originally.
Yeah, I didn't either.
The reason why it's called landmine is because we were literally, I was like, what do you want to call it? Pop's like, call it landmine because it's explosion at ground level. And I was like, cool.
That's incredible. I had no idea. That's
literally, that was the length of conversation on that. I mean, it's kind of funny. So like, you know, not like tooting our horn, but it was, so I wanted to do this exercise with a barbell. Uh-huh. I walk in the gym. I was like, Dad, I want to do this. And he was like, he literally looked, he goes, take the universal joint off the chest supported row, put a pipe on it, hook it to the platform over there. There you go.
Wow.
It was that long.
Really?
That long. And
that's
so we went out and played with it. I started playing with the application of it after we made it. I'm like, oh, you can press with it. Oh, you can snatch with it. Oh, and so I was playing with all doing the stuff. And then we called it a landmine. And it's kind of funny. I'm a big music fan. So like, it's a strange connection. But are you a Jimi Hendrix fan?
Yeah, of
yes.
So they said that he wrote Little Wing in, well, I think it was 140 seconds. He wrote Little Wing.
Really?
I did not know that.
Literally, it took him about 15 seconds longer to write the song than the length of the song.
Huh.
Wow.
And it's one of the best songs of all time. Yeah. And I kind of laughed. You know, wow, probably our most copied and popular piece that we ever came up with took less time to write than Little Wing, which took a minute.
What was the... So this is something that is always interesting to me, is that like there's of course like natural genius that happens, but generally you've put in the work and consumed content in order to come up with original ideas. So what was the inspiration that got you to doing that movement before you even came up with the idea that you needed to do the landmine?
You ready to go back into another loop back? Susie Powell.
Wow.
You wanted abs like hers?
No, we were talking training one day, and she goes, we do this exercise at UCLA where we stick a shoe in the corner and jam a bar into it, and we twist back and forth. And I started talking to Judd Logan, another one of my favorite coaches. I said, Coach, have you ever done these? He goes, yeah, we call them Ninos. I was like, what's Nino? He goes, it's the Mexican coach that taught me how to do it. I don't know what they're called. I'm like, okay, cool. So I came back and I was like, I want to do this thing.
Yeah.
And I kept playing with it. And then that's how the landmine.
Yeah.
So cool.
See, that's what I love, is that like people think that there are these light bulb moments that people just come up with their brilliant
like
things
out of the blue,
out of thin air. And like we talked about in the last podcast, you know, the melody for the song Yesterday by the Beatles. The legend goes that what's his name? Not
Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney woke up like half drunk in the middle of the night and was like jamming on the piano and then decided that was the song. But if you deep dive, you know, he's talked about it, that it stems from all of the musicians and songs that like really influenced him. There's a lot of that melody.
Sure.
And so that's interesting that you, with probably my favorite piece of equipment, you know, the inspiration behind it is really just you building off something that you picked up from somebody else.
Yeah, and that's how it always is, right? When you're an explorer, you're always exploring.
Yeah.
And so when we would get together at different meets or whoever that was, it was, you know, hey, what are y'all doing in your training right now? How heavy are you front squatting right now? What's your clean right now? And you're always talking this stuff. And Aaron Osmus is another guy that he and I threw against each other in college.
Sure.
That's why we're friends. And so we would sit there and 18, 19, 20 years old, talk training. And, you know, whether it was Susie or whether it was Judd or whoever it was, we're always talking training. Then you get ideas like the single leg squat. That was another piece that we came up with when 2002, I went to Athens, Georgia. They were doing these, rear leg elevated squats off of these like wooden boxes. They were kind of these real crazy looking wooden boxes. And I'd never seen them done before. And Terry Steer was in there and she was an absolute stud of a shot putter. And she was doing like 245 or 260. I think she was doing 265 female rear leg elevated splits. 265 for a set of 4.
Before people were like regularly programmed.
Oh my gosh, that was really hard. So I went home and I was sitting there. I'm like, well, crap, I want to do that exercise. And I was already strong, like 2-leg squat, but tried it and I couldn't do anything. And I was putting my foot on a bench. I said, well, the point of when my toes on the bench, I have too much flexibility in the ankle. It becomes a stability exercise. I want to overload exercise. Let me get something I could dorsiflex my foot over and actually put some real weight on because I'm a hammer thrower. I'm not trying to do balance exercise. I got to be strong. Yeah. So of course we made it adjustable and went out in the shop and made the first single leg squat. And that was that. I mean, again, it was something I was trying to train on.
It's interesting now because like looking at those 2 times, you know, 2 decades apart, like 20 years ago when you guys were doing these things and having these conversations, there was no social media where you were like sharing ideas or sharing training techniques or, you know, like able to buy a program offline to get you, you know, whatever. Whereas today, these ideas and these like wacky movements, you know, regardless of if they're beneficial or not, still pushing the limits of what we're doing right now are so easily shared, you know, via Instagram or YouTube that I would imagine the amount of movements to, you know, increase your single leg squat are now tenfold what they were, you know, 20 years ago.
It's incredible. Yeah. I use the term burn the gas a lot of times. And that was how a lot of this happened was you got in your car and you burned the gas getting to wherever you were going and you experienced it. You experienced it firsthand.
Yeah.
You didn't see it on the internet. You didn't read about it. You didn't listen to a podcast. You got your ass in a car and you went to where it was going on.
Yeah.
You experienced it. And then you had these conversations with people. And I've said before, like if someone beat me in my event or I consider was stronger or whatever, I would offer to buy them dinner.
Yeah.
I'd take them out and give them beers and bourbon until they would get drunk enough to tell me how they beat me.
Nice.
Like that was what I would do. I'm like, all right, we'd have drinks and I'd become their, you know, we'd befriend each other and everything. And I dig and you listen to someone go, oh yeah, we stack all these plates and we do this thing that does this. I'm like, what's that?
Yeah.
You know,
Joe always talks about when he was entering into like the decathlon world, he would go to each event at whatever the conference championships, let's just say.
His original was at the USA Championship.
Is that what it was?
Because it was in Indianapolis
Yeah,
and
he
Bloomington.
drove down.
He would go and watch.
He'd go and sit in the stands and watch the best throwers or the best pole vaulters or the best runners. And he would see who they would look up into the stands at, who their coaches were. And he'd go up and he'd sit right next to him and he would just, you know, like you said, almost Rudy it of, hey, how is he doing so well? Or can I come train with you? And
100%.
So he was burning the gas too.
That is exactly. And I was probably 1997 Indianapolis, if I was to guess.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds.
Bloomington.
I don't know. Yeah, you would know more than.
I don't know.
But I drove
I'm
to
just
the-
saying,
I drove
that
to the
sounds
same
right.
meet.
That's when Joe probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So that was the national championships that was there, because that was the last one that I didn't make in my career.
Oh, really?
So I drove up from South Carolina to it. I burned the gas,
Yeah.
I went through the mountains, and I sat there for multiple days because I remember thinking, I need to see a national championships before I compete in
Yeah,
that.
man, we gotta get you and Joe to talk, because you guys would freaking hit it off. You guys have like that same parallel mindset and athletic background.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. And you would see the Art Venegases and all these other big time coaches up in the stands, and I'd go sit with them. I'd go sit with the UCLA team and just listen, because they had the best throwers right now. Then, the exact same thing. That's how it was done back then.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see, because the guys who did stuff like that are still in the game.
Yeah.
Because it was so burned into their hard drive what worked, and you weren't doing that stuff if you were kind of interested.
Sure.
You loved it.
Yeah.
You loved it. And that was the thing. It's like, no, whatever I have to do to figure out how to unlock this combination to success,
Sure.
I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go to every party. Oh, those guys are over there at that party. The American record holders are there. I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm going to go figure out what
Hell
they're
yeah.
doing. No one had cameras and taking selfies and crap like that.
Right.
It wasn't what it was about. It was like, I'm going to find the guy that won the Olympics last year, and I'm going to get 5 minutes of his time.
Yep.
Even if I could see his countenance of how he handles situations, just to go, okay. And I would just try to pull in all the information as possible. And that little stuff because again, I'm an only child and I trained by myself.
Yeah.
So I had to put those little memories in my head for years, training 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9 years by myself in a field, going like, I told some of my buddies were opponents of mine. I was like, you're my virtual training partners.
Mm-hmm.
I show up every day and I pretend you're there.
Yeah.
We get to throw against you. And but we all became friends, but I had to place these people that I had to throw against, because I had to create a community in my head, because once I graduated, I didn't have that community.
Right.
Sure.
That's so cool.
Yeah, this has got me like jacked up. I'm
Well,
pissed that I can't burn the gas
So I
and
was
come down to summer strong.
I know. So
See?
I was saying, or like what I was thinking of this whole time that you're saying this is now it's almost like, and I'm not like, this is as humble as possible, but it's kind of what we're doing with the podcast.
Yes.
Like we're literally just shooting our shot. We find these weird connections. We reach out on Instagram and we're just like, this person is the best at what they do in their industry, right? Bert Sorin is running, the most badass equipment company. We have some random connection, at least in my eyes, because I met Rick through you, through weird connections.
That is,
and we're like,
definitely
let's get him on the podcast. I want to pick his brain.
Awesome.
And then we just
But
take
you're
these
doing
nuggets
it,
and
man.
pearls.
You're burning your version of
Yeah.
gas, right?
Yeah.
It's just
This
a little
wasn't
cheaper.
thing. Yeah, but I will suggest that when you get the chance, that the legitimate old burning gas move,
Yeah.
it's worth
Dude,
it.
we're
Oh,
coming
yeah.
down to Sorinex.
Yeah, it's worth just whatever that is, like, just because there's this stuff like, it still even gives me chills. Like when you're around someone that's so passionate, and you're talking this far from them, at 2:00 in the morning in a bar, and both of you had some drinks and whatever, and that all the inhibition goes away and all the BS goes away, and you like see their lip quivering when they're talking about their passion. You could hear that in their voice, that little like almost tearing up. And you're like, oh, now I'm getting the magic of what this.
Yeah.
That's
Like this is the frequency that I want to resonate on
Yeah.
in life in general. Like there's some small conversations I've had with people over the years. I'm like, that 30 seconds taught me more about how this whole thing of life works. But unfortunately, you can't get it unless you're so close that literally the frequencies you feel between the two
Yeah.
people.
that's what
Like,
like
gives me
hard.
chills.
as a strength coach, we obviously love to do conferences and those kinds of things and clinics.
Mm.
And I always argue, don't even do presentation. And if you do, make them 20 or 30 minutes long. So that way people
Yeah.
can have 30 minutes to an hour between presentations to have those conversations, because that's where the magic happens. Is like, for me at the high school, I work with myself and there's one other guy, and half the time we don't get to do any professional development. It's not like being a part of a staff or anything. Right. So the magic really happens for me when I get to go to a conference and just have conversations with coaches about how their program's going, how they got to where they are, you know, how they're making things go the way they are. So that's what the podcast has been really amazing, because we get to talk to people like you and all the other people we've had on the podcast about their passion and how they got to where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you, dude. You're on the right track for sure. I'm just thinking, like, at conferences, I would say probably out of all the years I've been to conferences, and I've gone to the NSCA since 95 or 96, I'd say probably 3 or 4 presentations were legitimately remarkable.
Yeah.
In all those years, like remarkable. There's been a lot of good ones. Mm-hmm. There's been a few that have been unbelievable. But most of the things I learned were standing around in the conference hall talking to people, taking people out for drinks, coming home drunk from the bar, and you sit on the couches in the lobby area, and some other coach that's coming home dragging ass. And you're like, hey, and y'all sit down and you talk about training.
Yeah, 3 hours later, you're having an amazing conversation.
Amazing conversations. And you know, that's the stuff that a few things, you learn things that you won't learn other places, but you make those connections and those relationships that, you know, 10, 15, 20 years later, people are like, man, how do you know everyone in the industry? Because I'm like, I burned a lot of gas, and I sat on a lot of couches and a lot of bar stools.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of conversations. And the people who have done that, like they plowed so much of their field that you just have a really good pulse of what the industry is doing or not. But it's a very costly way to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's just,
I mean, it's costly one way or the other, right? If you don't burn the gas, then it's costly that you didn't, you know, learn the things that you did, and you don't make the money, or you don't make the success, or you don't make whatever,
or you don't have the passion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. When a coach told me years ago, at Buford High School in Atlanta, I mean, they just trounce there. I mean, they're ridiculously good. I mean, they literally had a 60-game winning streak. It was crazy. One of the guys I know played for them. He's the winningest high school player in Georgia, because he was 60-0 as his high school.
That's a decent career.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, they're amazing. But the interesting part is Jeff Simpson. I was talking to him one day, the head coach, and I said, "Coach, man, like, because what they were doing, the kids, I'm watching these kids, and they're just brutal. They're so violently strong, and just the violence of action was incredible. It was just the only time I've seen players just the twitchiness and just was the night of the 2001-2002 Miami Hurricanes. Same.
That is an elite team.
Exactly. Super aggressive. So I'm watching these kids, and they're just, you know, a kid, the high school kids cleaning, you know, 235, smoking it, boom, dropping it down on thing. And I'm like, hey, coach. So I was like, that's pretty. So what positions he plays? He's like, what are you talking about? I said, that kid is just cleaning. He goes, oh, he's just a regular dude. I was like, that's just a regular PE kid? You know, this is like 2008, you know, like a while back. I'm like, really? And then his kid, like his real football kids come in, and they're just smashing weights, and they're dropping weights. And I told him, I said, hey, just side note, I said, you know, our equipment is strong. I said, but if you're just dropping stuff intentionally, like smashing it down on stuff, eventually you're going to have issues. You know, just giving you the heads up. And he goes, Coach, winning is expensive. I'm well aware of that. He goes, whether it's time. He goes, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's support. He goes, all the stuff that it takes to win costs someone a lot. Yeah. He goes, I would much rather those kids be absolute savages, and I got to repair some equipment every once in a while, and have them be a bunch of sissy that baby stuff.
Yeah, that's so sick.
That's why we.
That's
why we just got Sorin X Bosco bumpers at Granville High School.
But it was just wild. I was just like, that's the first time I heard. He goes, winning is expensive.
Yeah, that's going to resonate
at all levels, right? At all levels,
Yeah.
all careers, all industries.
Yes, but the other part about it is so is losing.
Yeah, totally.
So is losing.
Yeah.
So
It's just in
if
its own
gonna
unique
cost
ways.
you- if it's going to cost you one way or the other, why not win?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why not be good at it? If you're going to be here, you're taking the time. You're doing 4 years of high school and 4 or 5 years of college. You're doing the stuff.
Why not win?
That's such a small percentage of the time that you're living. Why not do it freaking amazing?
Yeah.
And crush it. And then be able to look back and go, I crushed it. I did as much as I possibly could.
Yeah.
I figured that out my freshman year in college. I said, my last throw of my college career, I'm throwing as absolutely recklessly as hard as I possibly can. No matter what position I'm in, no matter what, anything, my last throw, I know 100% I couldn't have done
Yeah,
anything.
leaving it all on the table.
Wow.
And so, you know, I actually had a better throw earlier in the series. The last one I just went after, but I walked away from it, didn't even watch it land. I was like, I know it wasn't any better, but that's as good as I could do.
So
And I
cool.
made a promise to myself that I made at 18 years old to go, I couldn't have done it.
You better be careful
And then
talking
I was
all
able
this
to walk away from my community
great
pretty
shit. You're getting me jacked up. I'm about to just go lift weights. It's 8:41 at night,
You're
and I'm
just
about
drunk.
to just go start lifting.
I know this is like I'm like trying to control myself with how jacked up I am. I already trained today, thank God.
Me too, but
But I'm just
So we're gonna have to like cut all of that out and just put it in its own podcast
Yeah.
of like listen to this before you train.
yeah,
You're gonna run through a wall.
yeah.
it's the thing, man. Like people don't understand. Like there's days that are amazing, and you got to ride that wave when you have it.
Mhm.
Like I look back and go, there's so many days that I was probably smart to not do certain things on certain days.
Sure.
But other times I'm like, man, I could have rode the lightning that day and I didn't.
Roll the lightning.
That is like-
that's badass.
That's one of my number one rules is at the high school is like we talk about the stoplight is like green light, yellow light, red light. You know, if you are feeling like green light, go, you know, we're going to play around with the weight or the sets that day. You know,
Yeah.
I actually just recently tweeted about that. I was irritated with coaches that were saying they had never had a kid take a max in their entire weightlifting career. And I said, you know, how do you find what you're made of if you don't go to the place where you're uncomfortable? And on the other side of things, like, how do you find out what you're made of if you don't think you can do something and then you smack that set that you didn't think you were going to get, 3 reps on and then you got 7 reps on or whatever.
Or think you have to get 7 and get 14.
Yeah. Well, Hunt, you're exactly right. But those are the things that totally set up my mentality for my entire professional career in my adult life.
Yeah.
When stuff got hard, I was like, oh yeah, like the set that I was shit blood for a week afterwards. That's it.
Yeah. But you also
Yeah.
like, I mean, with in
that's
all
it.
seriousness, these are the moments like I can think of, 3 to 5 of these moments where it's like, that was either really badass that I was able to pull that off, or it was really shitty because I failed. But the amount that you learn from that moment is going to change the way that you act in the future.
100%.
It's an expensive moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes the recklessness, and this is probably going to get me in trouble. The recklessness that sometimes is worth the lesson
Yeah.
and worth the
Totally.
experience.
Totally.
You know, people are like, oh, you got to stay within yourself and follow the training and this and that. And I'm like, listen, for most athletes out there, they're probably not going to be a world champion, Olympic champion, or like super high, whatever. And if that kid gets to go, I call it touch the curtain. It's like, when you hear about people almost die, they feel like they're touching the curtain. And
Okay, I get it now. That's good.
yeah. So that's what I now that I'm not like, I can't go there very often. I always tell I'm going to touch the curtain once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to rev the engines and go above. I'm going to overstretch where I should be.
Yeah.
Partially just because I like riding the wave.
Yeah. Keeps you alive.
Yeah, it keeps you alive. Like Squattober this year, I think I set my PR at 400 or whatever. And I've squatted considerably more than that, but it was like, probably in 400-ish shape. We'll put it at 400, see what happens. So we did all the stuff on 400 and we got to like go day and I went 545.
Holy smokes.
And there were guys like, like what the heck? And but at 400, I stood up and I looked and my buddy Josh was with me. He said I had that wide eyed, and I was like, I'm riding it. And it was just and it was just get out of my way, load the bar. I know I have a very short period of time on this earth that I'm going to ride this wave. I'm on the wave. Get out of my way. Let me ride this wave because in 20 minutes from now, I'm going to be sorry I did this. But right now, I'm touching the curtain. This is my This is my day this year. We're touching the curtain.
Me in, coach.
And at 5:45, went up, and I'm like, I'm going 6, and I was like, ew, that's a bad plan.
Yeah.
Then I was like, pump the brakes a little bit, but I looked back and I'm like, that was the stuff. If I had played it safe and done my normal, I would have walked away going,
what could I have done?
Wasn't that fun?
Right.
It was heavy enough to not be fun. It was heavy enough to be hard and light enough to not be fun.
Yeah.
That's always looked like there's middle weights.
Yeah.
Put something on there enough that it makes me feel like I got punched in the mouth that I want to fight.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a bunch of freaking weight on my back.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to make
put on a shirt.
I'm making a sign at the high school that says heavy enough to be fun, but hard enough,
Yeah. I mean,
to
because
feel
you
like
look
you got
at
punched
those,
in the face.
and everybody has those weights where you're like, like me when I was strong, it was like the mid 3s. It was enough that I didn't feel like doing it, but it wasn't enough that I got an endorphin rush or a drink.
Yeah.
So it worked. But when it got over 455, it was like, all right, now we're going.
Let's tango now.
Yeah.
Sure. So just knowing that about your athletes and making sure that sometimes you're just having a good time because most of them are going to graduate. They're never going to play football again or whatever. And then when they could look back and go, that one day I read the engines and I did 405 or whatever, and they're getting to go. That was an awesome experience I had with this physical culture thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with that. I enjoyed that. That was a positive experience.
Yeah. And they'll always look back at it and remember that moment.
Yeah. And then they might get back into it later on in life, or maybe they're going to keep on doing it if you've done a great job with them. But that was something Pop showed me early on. Everyone's like, don't max out with the kids when they're young. Don't max out. And I go, I got it. But I pulled double body weight when I was 8 years old.
Ooh,
that's so cool.
But I look back and I go, well, we weren't training for it necessarily. I learned some steps of what to do. But a lot of times it was just, hey, this is a big freaking weight on the ground. Or do you want it bad enough? And then that imprints that early on, okay, stuff is hard in life.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes when you could get to this place where it hurts real bad, it's really fun. The other end of that.
Absolutely.
The other side of hard is really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's addicting to the culture that we all live in, whether it's in my world or it's general strength and conditioning or it's powerlifting or strongman or whatever it is. The things you get nervous for are usually the things that are going to put the biggest smile on your face after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we go into a couple of years ago, I competed in Australia with the team that I compete for. And I'll never forget this moment. And it's the other head coach at the gym. It's his wife. She's on our team. Her name's Heather. So if she listens to this, she'll get a big smile and kick out of it because we talk about it every once in a while. But we're walking onto into the corrals for the teams before we go out onto the stadium floor. And I could tell she was nervous and I was nervous. I get nervous before everything, every big competition. And I look at her. She looks at me with this stone cold look and she's like, why do we do this to ourselves? And it was the most real moment because we know we're going into battle. And for lack of better terms, it's going to suck. But on the end of that, when you finish whatever that workout is, or you lift the weight that you're nervous for, you do whatever event you got butterflies for. On the other side of that, it is the most rewarding and just fulfilling feeling. And that's what continues to bring people back into those events.
Yes, because the value is very directly proportional to the amount of nervousness and fear you have on the front end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise you get into it. And when I was competing and I wasn't excited about competing is when I stopped competing.
Yeah.
Whether I was good or not.
Right. Because what do you have in it?
If I'm not afraid of this or kind of iffy, it's I got more enjoyable things to do because I know I'm not getting a lot of money from lifting these weights and throwing the timer.
Yeah. What did Joe say that these sports are called? They're called
mountain climbing sports.
Yeah.
There's there's money sports, which are football, basketball, baseball. And then there's mountain climbing sports like track and weightlifting. Because You're not in it for the money, and you're competing against other people, but you're not like imposing your will on them like you would in wrestling or whatever. So technically you're just climbing the mountain with everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool way to look at it.
Out of the enjoyment for it.
Yes.
And the really the process of it all.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And the thought that maybe you'll do something amazing one day.
Yeah.
That you get to fantasize, and I think that's a thing too. I think to be a good athlete and to really enjoy this, you have to have a very vivid imagination.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to envision yourself. In my opinion, that's what I always did well was I envisioned myself not only doing great things, but enjoying the doing great things and going, okay, what's the craziest, most outlandish thing that I think I could ever accomplish? And then go, okay, what's twice as crazy as that?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do.
Let's do it.
And you kind of start, you build your story, and then you do it so many times in your head, then eventually it kind of happens.
Right.
It's very strange, but what I normally found wasn't the people who could do it, but of the people that I found that couldn't do it, never did it.
Yeah.
Like they were never able to go.
Yeah, it was never. They never were able to mentally check into it.
Yeah. And they ended up leading pretty
Boring.
normal life.
Yeah.
There's so many great stories of that, like Jim Carrey writing himself a check for $1 million. Like, I don't even remember. It's like 4 or 10 years before the movie. And it's like dated around the same year that Dumb and Dumber came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah. And that's another exexample of that.
That's that imagination. And there is like a fine line between imagination and delusion.
Well,
right?
yeah,
like
of
the
course.
right people are going to have that, the imagination that pushes them to do crazy, great things. And then there's also the other side of people that are a little bit delusional where, like their aspirations might not be in their realm of, in their realm of, I guess, like possibilities. But at the same time, like, what's the corny saying? Like, shoot for the moon. If you miss, you among the stars or whatever. Like there's a lot of truth in that.
Well, and you'll find that as you get older too, that the people that were delusional, if they're delusional for long enough, the competition just kind of quits.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
It's weird. It's kind of like my wife laughs at me. She's like, "You're just always so delusional," and I'm like, "It's generally worked out pretty well."
Yeah, I think we're doing all right.
Yeah, right. And but it's kind of the people that just believe that stuff long enough, and usually it's like 10 years.
Yeah.
Like if you can last 10 years doing anything, you're going to be better than most people doing it.
Yeah.
Because most people quit after a year or two. So if that's the case, even if it's 3 years, that means you're going to be like three times as good as almost anyone else doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you do it for 10 years. If you're not very good at it by then I don't know.
Yeah.
Take a different
You
path.
can't be 3 times as good as your competition. Like I don't. But that's the thing. But if you're delusional enough to go, this is awesome. I'm going to be great at this one day, and I'm going to do some amazing things. You might be wrong, but here's the thing I've also found: most people are weak.
Yeah.
They're weak in their mind. They're weak physically, but they're weak in their mind. They don't believe they could do anything.
Yeah.
So your competition is a bunch of weak-minded people, which is generally the world.
Yeah.
When obstacles get in the way,
when
they
I
quit.
stopped, I hate to say it sounds like an a-hole. When I stopped holding the world to such a high standard, then I was like, oh, you just keep going.
Yeah.
So you just keep going.
Right.
Okay. And no one else will keep going. And if you keep going, you'll get to the finish line. It's that simple,
Right.
huh? Cool.
Right.
Got it. And so it's weird. Like I kind of, as I got older, I started just realizing those relatively simple truths.
Just continue to outwork and out mentally tough people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because most people don't want it that way.
Right.
They'll quit.
Right.
They'll quit.
As such like
So-
a mentally tough, high achiever person, obviously the podcast is called Bourbon and Balance. How do you find balance now in your life? Because that's something I hear about, fairly frequently is coaches and athletes that they put their work or their whatever their pursuit is ahead of the things that they realize too late are really important. So like, how do you as a family man, find balance between all the things that you're doing? Because clearly at Sorin X, you're doing podcasts, you're on a podcast with us right now on a Monday night. You're doing Sorin X Outdoors. You're doing all the things that you're doing. So how do you find balance?
I think I'm not good at it.
First of all, that's such a common answer.
And he's honest as well.
Yeah, I'm not good at it, first of all, but I do believe there has to be seasons in your life. And I don't know if it's impossible to be actually balanced and successful.
Sure.
Like, I think there has to be seasons where you just go, like a training block.
Yeah.
You go, for the next this amount of time, I'm going to be grossly unbalanced. But I realize that this isn't habitual. I have to get this done to set me up or to set my goal up or whatever it is. And I had a lot of those years. I had years. That's why I eventually got married, because I had the years where I wasn't balanced.
Yeah.
I had a decade or so where it was training, throwing, and Sorin X only.
Yeah.
That was it. That's all that mattered.
Yeah.
And set me up. I mean, it laid the groundwork, but really, it's hard. I think balance is it's like a goal that you're going for, but I think there's a time when it's just like you got to root hog or die. It's one of those like, hey, this is just how this is going to be, because I don't know. I haven't seen it work another way. I know. I think as soon as you can, now you go hard, and when you can be off, you need to be off.
Yeah.
You need to like be with your family. You need to be with your friends. You need to be, taking care of yourself. So we talk about like no gray areas. And so don't kind of be working, kind of be playing, kind of be doing this, kind of be, because then you're never, and I struggle with that.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be in my kitchen, I'll have an email pop up, I'll start responding. It's Saturday at 6:00. My kids are asking me stuff. I'm like halfway listening to them. Let me get back to this guy real quick. And I go, hold on, you're doing like, you're supposed to be home. You're supposed to be with the kids, but you're kind of at work now too, kind of.
Yeah.
But you're not at work, but you're kind of at work.
Yeah.
So I would just say like, it needs to be a black and white thing. And I've tried that more and more.
It's interesting you say that, because right now I'm reading a book that's called Deep Work. Have you ever seen any of it?
I haven't.
It's by Cal Newport. I'm not even through it, but what you said, it's wild. I literally just started reading it 2 days ago. And one of the things that he talks about is like batch working. And there's this guy, I cannot remember. He's a guy who works at an Ivy League school who has more Pulitzer Prizes and like more peer-reviewed doctorate like articles than anybody else, like by far than anybody else. And what he does is what they call batch work, which is he teaches a class. He only teaches classes in the fall, but that's all he does. He never does research or writing or anything. He teaches classes all fall. And then in the spring, he never teaches a class. He only does writing all the time, which is like an extreme example of that. But there's other examples of people who are like CEOs of companies and things where they work a 12-hour day. But when they walk in the door of their house, they plug it into their phone into a charger and put it on like a stand by the door, like the entry of the house. Yeah. And they're not allowed to touch it until until they arrive at work.
Really?
Or whatever.
Wow.
And so it's interesting that you say that, because that's like obviously not to the extent of owning a company, like the extent of Sorin X, but I'm in charge of 900 kids at Granville, and I get emails all day long, and we do the podcast, and I'm the state director for the high school strength coaches organization. I could be busy all the time if I wanted to, but one thing I've tried to do is batch by going home, plugging my phone in, and making sure that I'm there with my daughter and my wife. Yeah. And when it's work, it's work. When it's not, I'm unplugged.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. And then the other side of it that you don't really like to admit, increase your capacity.
Yeah.
Because if you're really going to be successful in any of that, it takes time.
Yeah.
So you have to, you're going to sleep less.
Yep.
You're going to have to you learn to eat fast. you just
the amount of Tupperware meals that I consume is sickening.
That's one of the best pieces of advice I ever get, that like going out to lunch is the biggest waste of time that you can have.
Yeah.
Make your own lunch and eat it while you answer emails.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And so that's the thing. It's just like, if you realize like this is I call it the high performance lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you're going to be a high performer and a high producer, it's like if you're going to be an athlete, increase your strength level.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have to increase your capacity if that lifestyle is something that you would like. There is no normal balanced way to go about it.
And all of the highly successful people for a very long time, or even currently in their success, they're not really that balanced, because they're unable to be in order to be that high level of performance. Like any athlete that you look at, I guess you could probably make an argument for some, but most at that caliber are not very balanced within their life. And that's just the phase that they're in.
Right. But you're always striving towards it. That's the difference. Right. Is people who just shut it off like it doesn't exist. That's where you get in some problems. But, I know I need to be with my family as much as possible. Right. I know I need to be with, my pull is always, I need to be with my customers. I need to be with my employees and my team. I need to be with my family. I need to be with my wife. Now, family and wife are two different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Family is we're all together. Wife is like, that's the woman I'm still dating. Right. And then, to have any type of social interactions. And then but there's also the business social side of it too, where you're expanding your social network. Mm-hmm. You have to put time into that as well. So it's a juggling act. There's no doubt about it. And you can't take your foot off the gas. You can't get behind the power curve on it.
I appreciate that you
have to stay on it all the time.
That, you're striving towards it, because there's so many people that I feel like, throw it out the window when they realize how daunting it can be to find balance.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess just circling back to family, it's probably about time for you to get back to your family. So I guess the last question that I have, and again, the podcast being named Bourbon and Balance, what's your biggest vice in life?
Ooh. I'm on social media more than I'd like to be.
Really?
Yeah.
I am as well, which is, it's funny that you say that.
I don't like social media is like definitely a two-edged sword with me.
Yeah.
It's very good for our business. I've gotten some great social interactions, a lot of friends that I have now that I met through social media channels. A lot of experiences I've had have been through that. But I really appreciate a quiet room with 2 or 3 people on a couch and talking to people.
Yeah.
So, and I see how social media is being used, unfortunately, not for the good all the time. Yeah. So that's where I go. I kind of wish I could get off this thing, but I kind of need to.
Yeah, that's what is the hard thing, is like you feel like you got to fight the good fight.
Yeah.
So I feel you on that. Do you want to do rapid fire quick questions?
That was really the only.
I got a lot.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I feel like we've been running it late.
Well, we didn't even dive into Sorin X Outdoors. You just started hunting.
I know, I did.
So that's a weird thing that both of us didn't grow up hunting, but we've recently gotten into outdoors and hunting and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And guns.
I guess what's your favorite animal to hunt?
Whitetail deer.
Really?
That's huge.
Yeah, it's just kind of like they're just so plentiful. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's what I grew up dreaming about, because that was kind of accessible.
Yeah.
I mean, I love just whitetail deer are awesome, but I'm really falling in love with mule deer more because I have a vendetta against them now, because I've been 3 different times and I've been really, really close all 3 times, and I haven't got a shot.
That's how turkey hunting has been for me. I've been out twice this year for the first time. My father-in-law and brother-in-law they're teaching me the ways, and man, we went this past Saturday, and for 5 hours straight, we were talking to them all day.
Wow.
And we couldn't.
Awesome hunt.
And it was great. It was exciting. We split up at one point. You can talk and you can walk around, and then they're smart birds.
Sure.
But yeah, it was very fun. But now I have a vendetta out for one of these damn toms that I'm gonna take down.
Yeah, it's funny. You're like a year ago, I wouldn't have cared two craps.
Oh my
about
gosh,
a
my
turtle.
wife
Now
jokes
it's
with
like,
me all the time. Like 10 years ago, I don't even know if I ever shot a gun then.
Yeah.
right.
I was like not anti-hunting by any means. I just thought, oh, those guys are kind of
Metro
strange.
Detroit, it's not really a thing.
Yeah. Now I'm like, that's like all I
you
want
weren't
to
exposed to it, right?
Yeah.
And
do. Yeah.
All
All right, you get one question.
I get one
It's
question.
a
Well,
long ass
it's
podcast.
bourbon and balance. What are you drinking tonight?
Woodford Reserve. That's
Ooh,
my favorite.
Great choice.
Yeah, I do. Try and reach. I have a store pick of it.
Oh, there
It's
you
good
go.
stuff.
Is that the double
Can't
oak
go
or
wrong.
the
That'll be
race?
celebratory after some competing. Well, yeah,
Man.
I mean, I don't. You're a very busy man, so I can't thank you enough for taking the time to, especially on a Monday night, to sit down with us knuckleheads
Yeah.
and give us some
Talk to
knowledge
us for an
bombs.
hour and a half. It's been incredible.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah,
You better
Don't take
believe
it for
we're
granted.
coming down to Sorin X.
You better.
Dude.
Rick Court keeps telling us how much we got to come down. Every time I see you guys post anything, it's just been bad timing. Every time
Yeah.
I have the opportunity to come down, something
I'm
else
blowing
has-
it this time
Yeah.
because Rick reached out last month and was like, "Hey, you guys, you got to come with us," because we hang out with Rick quite a bit. He's just an awesome dude.
He's
Like
awesome.
I can't say enough good things about him, but it happened to fall on my 30th birthday weekend, and I don't know what we're doing, but
You're coming to Summer Strong, it looks like.
that would be great. So yeah, I guess in the future, any opportunity that we get to come down, we will most definitely jump on it.
I'd love it. Love to have you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for taking the time. We're gonna sign off now, and I guess we'll see people we'll talk to people in the next couple weeks.
Yeah. Bourbon and Balance boys out. If you made it this far, thank you so much. And if you enjoyed this content, please like our social media posts, share, save, do all those kinds of things. It really helps us organically grow the show. While you're headed over to our social media, check out our new Broly training program. To get in shape and get stronger this summer, use promo code BROLY50 to get 50% off your first month of training. Also, head over to colewhipspeedropes.com and get yourself the best jump rope on the market. Once again, thank you for listening and keep your body, mind, and drink strong. Have a great week.